Welcome to Aurora Comics Podcast. We're two nurses discussing health, culture, and comics. My name is Dr. Ebony Toussaint. I'm a wife, a mom, and a research scientist and nurse. And I'm here, well, usually joined by my pod partner who gives her regards, nurse, wife, and mom as well, Carla Madrano. Here, our special guest today, we have Angelique Roche. We're super excited. She's a journalist, producer, author, and professional host from New Orleans, Louisiana. She's a multi-hyphenate storyteller. Her work sits at the crossroads of history, current events, and its impact on pop culture. She has been seen and heard on various outlets and platforms, including Harper's Bazaar, NBC News, MSNBC, AMC, SyfyWire, Disney, Marvel Studios, ESPN, and Paramount Plus. Angelique has hosted and produced multiple non-scripted series, including Brave New Pod, Geek Explain, Roles Ranked, SyfyWire Rewind, and New York Public Radio's WNYC Very Biggest Questions. A member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, American Inns of Court, the Louisiana Bar Association, Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity, and Sigma Alpha Iota Music Fraternity. She earned her BA in Mass Communications, Print Journalism at Southern University and A&M College in 2003, and her Juris Doctorate from the Southern University Law Center in 2006. In 2007, she earned her Master of Laws in International and Comparative Law from George Washington University Law School, Raise High. In addition to her degree work, Angelique has completed various postgraduate and professional programs, including the Army ROTC Cadet Leadership Institute, Princeton Emerging Leaders Program, and the Campaign School at Yale. Angelique is currently a Religion and Public Life Arts and Popular Culture Fellow at the Harvard Divinity School. Wow, multi-hyphenate indeed. So, Angelique, take us back to the moment you picked up your first comic book. When did you know that you wanted to be to tell stories through this medium and in this way, or even a graphic novel?
So the interesting thing is, I've always loved stories. I was a big novel person. So long story short, my sisters are 10 and 12 years older than me, which is why I identify as a zennial with the X. So you're like, you're not. I'm like, I dress like Janine Garofalo mixed with Left Eye. I really don't want you to take this from me. And then my mom taught at the time it was the largest HBCU. Well, she didn't teach; she was an administrator at the largest HBCU in the country. And so when my sisters got older, they would leave their novels. And so, seventh, eighth grade, I'm reading Jurassic Park and Congo and Sphere and Outbreak and all these other like very big mind bending books. Um, but definitely like, what is this eighth grade novel you want me to read? This seems boring. And I loved movies because this is at the time where cable was kind of expanding itself and we were getting those free weekends on HBO and we were getting the free weekends on Cinemax. And I was getting to like rewatch these movies on USA and all that stuff. So about 9 years old, my sister, second sister goes to college. My parents would drop me off with her. And that is when I learned about more video games than were at Blockbuster. One. So Mortal Kombat came into my life. And her friends took me to a comic book store. And I saw my first X-Men comics like in literal milk crates, like stuff that you don't see anymore, right? But, that was like a big cool thing. Like I remember one of the guys skateboarded down, and this is in New Orleans. So it is very dangerous for those who understand potholes to skateboard on the streets of New Orleans. I remember being like, I want to do it and like falling them a lot. I realized at that point in time, I was a cute little chubster with a little cute chubby face, and I did not have any equilibrium at that time in my life. It was not meant for me. Um, but really, what solidified it is that when I was 9 years old, my dad gave me um, The Death of Superman, the trade paperback. And it was for Christmas. And he said he remembered he had been at Toys R Us or somewhere else and he'd seen it and it was Superman. And he said, I don't really know what's in it, but I know it's important. And, later my father and I would kind of talk about this concept that when he was younger, they would not let him. He didn't have enough money to buy the comic books. And he would sit in Woolworth as long as they would allow him until they realized my father was Black. Because my father's a little more fair skinned. And once they realized he was Black, they'd kick him out. And so he's like, I'm not really sure what's in it, but I know it's important. And there are a lot of gifts you remember because they're cool. Like my parents got me the game systems because I was the baby. I was the last one. My other two sisters were basically through college by the time I was kind of growing up. And, but to this day, I still have the copy of The Death of Superman that my father gave me. And to be at a point in my life where I have edited something from Louise Simonson, who was the woman, right, who wrote in that series, you know, it was a huge deal to me. And but for me, with Marvel Comics in particular, I love movies and stories so much that when I see something, and you're missing it, I had my Storm shirt on, but earlier I had a Howard the Duck shirt on, which is actually my first Marvel movie. At me, I don't care. I still love Howard the Duck. It's problematic in a lot of ways. And there are probably children watching it, so I'm not going to say the ways that it is problematic. Um, but I was a child and it was an anthropomorphic duck, and it seemed very entertaining. And Holly Pete was in it. And so once I started digging and realizing that a lot of stuff that I loved was Marvel, um, as I got older, I started digging into the storylines and realizing where it came from. And so I had a little comic book collection, but I always tell people I collected music and movies like people collected comics. That has changed. Um, I now own a number of comics that are much older than me that are sitting about 20 feet from us right now, including my pride and joys. Can I go get her?
Yes, yes, please.
Oh, the introduction of Monica Rambeau.
The Amazing Spider-Man. Wow.
Spider-Man number 16, which is the first appearance of Monica Rambeau. And
Wow.
The Return of Monica Rambeau, written by Dwayne McDuffie.
Oh my gosh.
I have both of them. It's what's called her only solo series, even though issue number one and issue number two were written like 10 years apart. Um, but yeah,
Mm.
so Pride and Joys. They hang on the wall.
Yeah, you're right. 1982. Wow. Yeah. The Amazing Spider-Man. Annual
Oh,
number.
she was born a month before I was born.
Wow. This is so cool.
And it was the first new woman superhero from New Orleans
Mm.
that I knew of. And I
Yeah.
that changes a lot, right? Like Monica's
Wow.
the girl. She's the jam. And
Yeah.
Roger Stern did an incredible job in the 80s writing her for
Mm.
the Avengers, and giving her a lot of substance, much like Chris Claremont did such a wonderful job redefining and expanding what a lot of people knew about Misty Knight.
Mm. Wow. This is going to make me go down a rabbit hole
You're
of my
welcome.
Rambo.
I will
Yeah.
go down the rabbit hole with you. I am happy to
I'm
be your
like, can we
Sherpa.
get more solo series for Monica Rambeau? That would
I
be
mean,
cool.
Eve Ewing just wrote a really great one at the beginning of the year. Should definitely check out.
Oh my God, Dr. Eve Ewing. Yes, yes. Oh,
Eve
goodness.
is great and has such an incredible love for comics and had such a different upbringing with comics, right? Like she was like she had a group of really great people around her and she would go to the comic book store as a kid, right? Like my
I did
dad.
not know she wrote this. So thank you for telling me that. Okay. Wow. Wow.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're my new best friend. This is so wonderful. Thank you. universe. Thank you, all the gods and the comic lords, everybody. Um, Angelique Roche. Wow, just oh man, where does it begin? Where does it end? Just yes, like you said, time is not linear. It's all happening at once. This is
That's one
so
time, one
our
time.
ancestors saw fit to bring us together in this way, and for that, I'm so grateful. So you talked a lot about your experience and your dad, this him giving you certain issues of comic books and you visiting and you collecting entertainment, other forms, just as much as you collected comic books, movies, and things like that. And so your chosen education, your chosen degree path. So how did your education and training as an attorney influence kind of your transition kind of into the entertainment industry in the space that you're in now for
So it's
storytelling?
actually the other way around.
Hmm.
I grew up very much a performer. I sang in the choir since junior high. I was in drama immediately once I was able to be in drama. Um, I was all districts, drama club president, lettered in choir and drama because you could do that at my school. The first movie I was an extra in was actually Ray. Um, yeah, it's not on my IMDb. But for me, I was a performance poet for 10 years, which was really like my way of processing being a young Black girl in the South and the over disciplining of Black girls, particularly those who are neurodivergent. And
Mm,
I was very lucky when I was younger. Although standardized testing is the product of a person who was trying to prevent the dilution of the United States intelligence pool. He was actually a eugenicist. For me, I was one of the rare people that standardized testing helped teachers understand that my intellect was higher
mm,
than what my grades were reflecting. And so when I went to school, I still did theater. I'm still a member of a music fraternity. I'm a charter member of a music fraternity, Sigma Alpha Iota.
mm,
Um,
mm.
or as I say, Iota. I don't say it very often. I was part of gospel choir for a little bit and, helped create a group called the Lumumba Players at Southern. I was in at least three productions while I was there for my 2.5 years of undergrad. And then my mom was like, "Look, I you can do," because she loved Michael Crichton. She's like, "You can do anything you want, but I'm gonna need you to get this law degree just in case." My mother was very scared that I was going to marry a man on a motorcycle and run off to go join the circus. It's a true story. And
It's a very specific fear and concern.
I was a quirky kid, right? And so for me, going to law school was a thing. And then I decided while I was in law school, I wanted an LL.M, which is much more of me going, I need to get out of Louisiana. I need to see the world. I need to know what everything else looks like. Um, Secretly knowing I was always coming back because there's no place in the world like Louisiana. There's no place in the world like New Orleans. And there's nothing more important than our history. And so I had while I was there, I had an internship with CBS News Productions in undergrad, and then I had an internship with the Gallup organization, thanks to one of my mentors, Dr. Sheila Kearney, a Black woman, went to Hampton, went to Harvard, brilliant woman. Um, and she saw something in me and gave me the first summer internship as a summer associate at Gallup in DC. And that introduced me to the general counsel and the CEO, and they did letters of recommendation for my LL.M. And little did I know that the general counsel had graduated number two in his class from GW.
Wow. Shout out to Black women just because, but also G-Dub, raised high, even though they're trying to figure out the mascot right now, instead of being colonizer, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Just don't make it the hippo. So the wild thing is, and this is kind of like what I love about being a person that moves, because you ask, like, how does that happen? Sometimes it happens about being ready and being in the right place the right time. So true story, and I rarely ever tell it. So I was working for the general counsel, and I was working for Sheila, who was one of the senior. I guess you can correlate it with a VP, senior director, because anybody knows. And I mean, when I say Gallup, I mean Gallup polls. Like, I mean the
Yeah.
Gallup organization, and they were going through a lot of trademark and copyright cases because so many people were utilizing their name, but they really weren't getting the polls from them. And so I was at the Library of Congress, like putting this all together, like seeing everything that had a copyright or trademark that said Gallup on it. I will say this: the general counsel wasn't necessarily that impressed with me. Um, and then one day, because I'm a type of person that loves getting to know people. I love getting to know people's stories, where they're from. I had met this guy whose last name was Pinchback. And if anybody knows anything about Louisiana, the first Black and only Black governor of the state of Louisiana was PBS Pinchback, who also fought in the Civil War
Hmm.
in the Louisiana. Um, the National Reserve, there's a specific name that was used for the Black Corps of fighters who fought in the Civil War, but also was a statesman, educator, like helped with a lot of the integration cases before he was basically run out of the state. And I was like, oh, Pinchback. He's like, yeah, no, my people long, long, long time ago were from Louisiana. I was like, so we become friends. And he goes, hey, what are you doing for 4th of July? And I was like, nothing. He's like, come to this party with me. My manager from this other club I work at is throwing a party at his place at the Ritz. It's like, cool. So I go, and when I go in there, I don't realize that the general counsel and his wife are part owners of the club that the guy manages.
Mhm.
And so after he sees me at the party, he walks up to the woman that hired me. He walks up to Sheila and goes, how long has she lived here? 4 weeks. And she got to this party by herself? Yeah, I didn't invite her. Whatever she needs.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time and being open and ready for opportunities. And so, for me, that got me to GW. I was able to do my thesis on international comparative law study on defamation, looking at common law, civil law, and Sharia law, which gave me a huge, huge respect because one of my teachers was actually from the UAE. And my telecom professor was the guy who was doing the Vonage case. Like, it was just such an amazing exposure.
Wow.
And so, I spent a couple of years on the Hill, working for Senator Mary Landrieu, which was also a wild accident. I was working at a gym at a time, and she was coming in to cancel one of her personal training appointments, and I shot my shot. And while I was there, left and ended up being hired on the Obama campaign, which got me hired to be a campaign manager out in Ohio. But while I was doing all that, I went to the Women's Campaign School at Yale, which is now known as a campaign school at Yale, and met my mentor, Teresa Younger, who was on the phone with last night, who is now the CEO and president of the Ms. Foundation for Women. And while I was on my campaign in Ohio, she said, I need you to come work for me. Like, she said this in a Forbes interview, so I guess I can say this now. It's like, I need you to come work for me. I was like, I can't. I'm going to go work for Hillary. I'm going to go do this. Like, I got to go do this. I got to do that. It was 2016. We were all hopeful. And
Mm.
she's like, I need you for 3 years. And to her word, 3 years in, my brain was burnt. Like, it wasn't really where I needed to be at the time I needed to be. Like, I think I'd have been older, I would have stayed longer and wanted to like follow in her footsteps.
Mm.
In fact, I still do work for her. And a friend of mine who I've met in DC as an artist, still performance poet, goes, hey, what are you doing in November? It's like, I don't know. What do I need to be doing in November? You want to come to the Middle East? Sure. And so right before I left, I talked to a friend, Lorraine, who had been in improv, and we had done some things together. And while I was in Abu, no, while I was in Bahrain on my way to Abu Dhabi, I got an email from Marvel. And I knew it was time, but I had been preparing the entire time, right? So like I had been writing for Rewire News. I had been writing for Black Girl Nerds. I had been a fill-in host at SiriusXM Progress. I had been learning how to do imaging and commercials. I had been taking improv classes. So it wasn't like it was something like I wasn't preparing and like not telling the world that I was ready for it. And I'd been writing short stories and poetry since I was 10 years old.
And you mentioned your roots and training in the performing arts and as a vocalist, being in choir and things like that as well. So all of that was training and preparation, despite mom saying, hey, before you go off and be an artist and run off on a motorcycle.
And she's like,
with
I just don't want you waiting tables. Do you know what I did after I graduated from grad school?
Did you wait tables? Look, ain't nothing wrong with that. We have so
I
many
was
similar
good at it.
stories, I swear. This makes me feel great. This makes me feel really great, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Exactly. And I think that's the point of the story. The point of the story isn't, oh man, that's so dope. That's so cool. The point of the story is sometimes the universe knows more than you. So chill out.
Yeah. And all that train, all that is training, like you said, being like in theater and I was in dancing, I was singing, I was writing poetry and all this stuff all my life. But I was like, I gotta be a serious scientist. Like you said, I kind of told to myself, because I'm a rural Gullah Geechee farm girl. It was like, just in case all this doesn't work out, I need to be a serious scientist and clinician because art ain't gonna pay the bills. Like,
Tell that to Brian Stelfreeze.
but your soul is always going to be hungry, for that art. And like you said, that the universe just knows and everything just comes back around. And shout out to my pod partner, Carla Madrano, for pushing me in front of the camera in this way and making me be here with you to share this space. So you went to the Middle East and you said Marvel rang like, hey, it's Marvel, it's Stan Lee and them. You got to come, do the things that Marvel's going to tell you to do. I mean, that's why we're here, a Rural Comics podcast, right? We're all here because of Marvel, really. So, but you also created these, such a unique thing. I wanted to bring you back a little bit to Trinity City #1, which is an Afrofuturistic coming of age story set in New Orleans, circa, the year 2078. It doesn't even feel like we're that far from that year, but and you also have some upcoming projects, with Marvel. And so whatever you can talk about here, please let us know. But also we wanted to talk about your work based in New Orleans, like where are you from and your legacy in Louisiana.
So, honestly, Trinity City #1 is the reason why I ended up back in New Orleans. I was in LA. And, the industry is sometimes the industry, right? Like you have to kind of be ready for anything. So when I started at Marvel, and I'm still at Marvel, I'm a consultant. I podcast host of Marvel's Voices, which is my baby. And it's so incredible that I now get to say, because it is public, that I was creator of Marvel's Voices. And it wasn't just me, like it was a team of folks. But like the structure, the questions, the research, like I'm really proud to say that the intent, and honestly, kind of when I came back from the Middle East, like having that first meeting, they were looking at me for another project, and then someone mentioned there was a show that was focused on the backgrounds and stories and the lives of people of color in the Marvel universe. And I said, say more, right? I was down for it. And so, with the help of two really good producers, we brought Marvel's Voices to life. This long form interview show that did something that other shows weren't doing, right? It was talking about the background and the lives and the influences of people of color across the board. And that turned into the Marvel's Voices anthology series, which, is kind of putting your money where your mouth is, right? It's saying, not only are we talking about diversity, we're adding to the diversity of the Marvel universe so we can paint an accurate picture. Like, a lot of folks are like, well, where are the Black characters? And when I tell them that there were over 200 Black characters created between 1969 and 1989 in the Marvel universe, they're like, oh. And, sometimes it's the way we talk about it. Sometimes it's a placement. Sometimes it's understanding. Sometimes it's getting the right folks in there to articulate, right? And so for me, as Marvel's Voices #1 came out, COVID was hitting. And so my work was able to expand remotely with the comics, and coming in to help with DEI consulting and strategic consulting, and review, because I was able to bring my work as, a former VP of External Affairs at the Ms. Foundation and a lawyer and a journalist to the table. Again, it's just kind of being ready for the opportunity and being able to make those connections. Also, I have to shout out folks like the Blurred Girl and Black Nerd, folks at SyfyWire, the folks who were like, hey, I know this person who has this talent, you should bring her in. So while I didn't have a manager, I really had folks who were looking out for me the same way I was trying to look out for them, the same way like John Jennings is looking out for me now. I look out for him, right? It's really a community. And so, my work expanded kind of in a wild twofold where I got my first red carpet, which was the season 2 of Luke Cage. And that turned into movie red carpets. But on the other side, I was doing Geek Explain with SyfyWire. I was still doing the Marvel's Voices podcast. I was able to do BTS work for Marvel. And then the comic expanded, which allowed me to be both on the editorial side and on the new media side, right? And so I'm now able to cross business lines, which extended when I got on board to write My Superhero is Black with John. And so it's just really been this interesting path, that has gotten me to a point to say, okay, I want to write. Because if you look at almost every one of the Marvel's Voices books, like, I'm also doing journalist work in it because I want people to truly understand the characters, the background, the impact. I want them to understand the artist, right? I want people to know who Janice Chang is. I want people to not just know Larry Hama's name, but Larry Hama's background. I want people to understand the work that Dennis Cowan did. And like, Dennis Cowan got into the industry at 16, right? I want people to know Frederick Aldama. I want people to understand why Cody Ziegler loves Miles Morales so much, and this background and this basis, right? I want people to understand how Alyssa Wong loves monsters and how Greg Pak really wants to do the first so no one ever has to be the first again because it becomes normalized, right? Those stories are so important. And so in all this work, I made friends with John Jennings, and John hits me up and is like, somebody's doing a story in New Orleans. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't know where my contracts are because, gig work. And I threw my hat in. And at first I said, hey, if you've got a New Orleans writer, you've got a Louisiana writer, hire them. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't want to take a job away from I don't want to be in LA and take a job away from somebody in Louisiana. That's not me.
Right.
Well, a couple months in, they brought us back for a workshop, and then I get a call and they're like, hey, like, do you want to come back? And I was like, huh? It's like, do you want to write it? Because we had some shifts and we needed a writer. And I said, cool. And so I was able to help them bring in some money from the Ford Foundation, background in philanthropy, and be able to kind of afford to fly me back and forth to work with the students because I really, as an educator, I really believe in a hands-on approach.
Yeah.
And I was able to reach out to to help the artists reach out to a lot of my friends who were in the industry who had interviewed before and be like, hey, man, I can't really explain concept art to an artist. Can you let me borrow some of your concept art just for the students? And it is an access thing, right? Eventually one of those artists actually ended up helping work with the artist for the book to help him kind of get down the serialized way of storytelling. Shout out to Ray Anthony Height for being amazing. But for me, I love young folks. I love storytelling. I love young folks understanding that their stories are important. I love people of color whose stories have been erased so much by colonization or by gaslighting, um, to feel like if they cannot find out their own story, they can root themselves in a story that they themselves create that personifies what their lived experiences are. And so this opportunity to write Trinity City Number One, which is this story that crisscrosses time, but also brings in a lot of historically important symbols and landmarks into New Orleans, um, was really a blessing for me. By the third time I came home, I was like, yo, somebody needs to send me a realtor. I don't want to go back to LA. I'm done. Like, I'm not going back to LA. And 45 days later, I was moving into my house because the universe had decided it was time to come home. Also, gas was $6 a gallon and the interest rates were going up. So I was like,
Mm. California is just not a real place. Just
but it
no.
knows how to party.
So
Oh,
I've heard.
so bad. So bad. So yeah. And so, I was really proud of it, right? And there's a lot of Easter eggs and there's a lot of pieces to Trinity City. For folks who are from here, they understand the Holy Trinity is like the core thing you put in all of your food, but also the city is based over Hunter's Field, which is about where the Claiborne overpass begins. And so for me, it was also about a reclamation of the destruction of Treme, by building the Claiborne overpass in the 60s and cutting the oldest Black neighborhood into and decimating Black owned businesses, and allowing that to be a community that they can build and they put together, and at least in the beginning, and if you read the book you'll understand how the shifts created their own government, their own structure, based on their values and their ethics and rooted in a lot of things that correspond with the New Orleans Black Indian culture.
Wow.
Mardi Gras Indians, yeah. Which, by the way, a lot of people don't understand. And we were talking about this earlier. A lot of the Mardi Gras Indians come from Haitian backgrounds. Their songs are in Creole, and people somehow don't remember that the people who lived in Hispaniola were Arawak. They were Taino. They were indigenous,
Mm.
and related to many of the indigenous people who lived on the coast of Central and South America. Um, and so, a lot of people try to say they're appropriating, and the question is, are they?
Yeah. The diaspora is real, whether people know about it or not. I had to even teach a student what the diaspora meant. They had never heard that. They had never heard terms like Sankofa and things like that. And so you talking of going back home and being called back home. Similarly, I find myself back home along the Gullah Geechee coast. Oh my gosh. Um, I do not know why I'm back here.
Keeps you looking young, though.
Uh-huh.
It keeps you looking young.
Yeah, thank God for that. I don't look like what I've been through. Thank God and the ancestors. So I've taken up a lot of your time today, and thank you so much for sharing so much
Oh,
yourself and your story
absolutely.
with us. It's simply beautiful. I could listen to you talk all day, and so if I've been quiet, it's because I'm taking it all in, the wisdom and depth of your soul. I feel like I've only barely touched the surface, and so I want more. And so when people hear about your contributions, you've shared so much of your contributions and everything you've been working on for all of your life, it seems, but at least now it's been like at least a decade or so. What do you want people to say about Angelique Roche, Queen Zulu? What do you want people to say? Writer, storyteller. What do you want people to say about you? And where can we find you and support you in your current projects?
Um, she understood the power of our stories and she helped preserve them. Fiction, nonfiction, um, archival. I look up to Carter G. Woodson, good, bad, mostly good, and understanding that his mission was to debunk his Professor Channing's assertion that the Negro had no history. And he spent his life dedicated not just to expanding the awareness of Black history, but opening the door that history was diverse, that other people outside of Western Europe impacted and made a difference and made ripples, and that they too had history and they too had culture. And that history and that culture was not only important, but essential. And that it deserved to be not only told, but written down, preserved, archived, and valued for its contributions to humanity. And so, whether that is getting a chance to be two of the first Black women to write Storm, whether that is um, celebrating the other firsts within spaces, whether that is um, interviewing our torchbearers in New Orleans, which I think is one of the reasons why I did move home, um, is to use my talents and give those talents back so that we start archiving and getting those stories preserved. Because if Katrina taught me anything, um, is that the whole that losing things that you didn't preserve can create is so much more destructive than you can fathom. And that means people, that means our oral storytellers, that means our translators, that means, our big chiefs, our curators, our musicians, our artists, right? They hold so much more value in their stories than we realize. And so, beyond anything, I hope that people see that I cared about everyone's story. Um, you can find me on the Instagrams, at least for now, and on the Twitters, at least for now. That is my dog, Dumas, named after Alexander Dumas. He's a big, cuddly guard dog who just really wants to get picks from the mailman right now and is mad that he cannot get to the other. Come here,
That's
Bubba.
wonderful. Dumas is the first official
Yeah,
what family member, furry family
her
member that we
baby.
had on Aurora Comics podcast. Welcome, Dumas.
He's like, no pictures, no pictures.
And if you wouldn't mind, Queen Zulu, we believe in gowns, darling. Can you show them who you are? Can we see the royal? Can we see it? Can
All
we
right, I will show you.
see it, please?
Oh, hold on. I will show you because literally it's on the other side.
Our subscribers want to know. They have to see it. We
On
must show.
Mardi Gras Day,
Oh,
this
show them who
is
you are. Yeah,
what I wore. It is waiting for its time to go to a museum. Eventually, it shall go there.
beautiful.
Um, but this was before I got crowned. This was the headpiece that was made for me to go with it.
How beautiful.
Handmade, molded on my head. Good gracious. It's gorgeous. I think I've wore it for like 10 minutes.
Waiting to come for Mardi Gras or Fan Expo. Mardi Gras or Fan Expo. I can't do both.
¿Por qué no los dos?
I know,
Also,
forget about this. I always say forget
also
about this.
I want to be real. You know, a lot of people, and I've said a lot of things about Black history and Black culture. Like my grandmother is Mexican. That's the thing that I love about New Orleans. So, you know, my people are Mexican, Haitian, German, Native American, and French. Um, and I, you know, and traceable. Let's be, and even if we weren't traceable, that's not your business. Um, but that's the beautiful thing about New Orleans. Is that our cultures have blended together how we cook our food, how we make tinctures, how we you know make our drinks, like that infusion of music and dance and culture, right?
Yes.
And so
Oh, you're calling me home, Angelique. Say less. You're calling me home. You're calling me home. You reminded me of how connected we are in the diaspora. Don't judge me. One of my all-time favorite artists is Selena.
I'm
Like
sorry,
it's
why would I judge you about bitty bitty bum bum?
oh
Amor
oh
prohibido. Why would I
ah,
do that? Why would
oh my God.
I?
Me and my sister, I
I
feel
will do anything for Salinas.
anything for Selena's. When I tell you me and my sister, it's like our own little personal
That is
fandom.
not a that. It's not a bra. It's a bustier.
It's a
A
bustier, busti la
busti caca.
cata.
No, ma'am. No, no. We do not disrespect the name Salina in this
Oh
house.
my gosh, at all. So it's how I
That's like
learned
saying,
Spanish.
"Oh,
And I
I'm
used
so
to be
sorry. I'm
fluent.
gonna let you know that I love Celia Cruz, ma'am. You said, why did you? Why are you apologizing?
La reina de salsa and la reina de cumbia. Ah. Oh, yes. Yes. Me amo
Why are
mucho.
you apologizing? I learned how to salsa in New Orleans.
Ah, yes. So it's like if you call it's like you're calling me home, girl. It's like the mothership's calling me home. And it's funny when I found out my mom's bio dad was from New Orleans, I was like, and now meeting you, I'm like, okay, Ebony makes sense. So
You
much of
get
me
it.
makes
You get it now. It's in your Dana, as my mother would say.
it's in my Dana. I say Dana all the time. It's in my Dana. Girl, we're here. We're here. We're here. We're here, sis. We're here. Okay. And now I got to come to both and I got to be able to justify this to my husband, who's also an attorney. So if you want to help your girl with some talking points,
I got you. I got you. I got you. I
an
got you.
amicus brief, but for me, I'm the friend. You're the friend. He's the court. I don't know, however the amicus thing works. Please just help a girl out. I can tell him I can drive. Just I can come. You
I
got a
love when
couch
people
I
who
can
work in the
stay in.
medical profession try to speak legalese. It's hilarious. My sister is a doctor, so it's just like every time she does that, I'm just like,
Something in there, girl. Yeah, I was in policy close to law. I was actually poli sci pre-law. I worked on the Hill too, but with money. My PhD is like advanced math. So I do healthcare dollars. So Senate Committee on Finance, OMB, Office of Budget Finance, pay fors, earmarking, that kind of thing.
I make
Yeah.
words pretty.
John does too whenever I start talking about math. I'm like, but everything's math. Music is math.
I mean,
Everything's
music is math.
everything's
But I make
math.
words pretty.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you're gonna help me convince him. I must get to Fan Expo and I have to get to Mardi Gras.
I
It
got
has
you,
to happen.
sis.
It's called my soul is calling me home. It's calling me home.
It
Well, I
is
think it's so much of
it's
it.
beautiful here.
It's been so great. And I haven't visited though from the perspective of I belong here, of that my ancestors touched the soil. So it's gonna be different coming back. I already know it's gonna be different coming back.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, okay. So I have to let you go officially. We've had so much fun here. I don't know what we're gonna cut, we're gonna keep. I don't know. But thank you so much for joining us on Aurora Comics podcast. We're two nurses discussing health, culture, and comic books. And you are now officially, family. So whenever you want us to highlight your work or, we'll tag you in a post, send us whatever you're working on. We'll be sure to highlight on the pod, do a review. It's official. So thank you for joining us here at Aurora Comics podcast.
Thank you, sis, and thank you for what you do because our voices are important.
You know it. You know it. And anytime, really, seriously, anytime, my fellow Pokemon trainer, all the things. We gonna have so much fun. I gotta come party. You talking about partying in California. We about to party in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, we talk about that offline.
Yes. All right, babe. We'll talk offline. I'll see you.
I'm gonna